How great was that previous pivotal episode 2 weeks ago with Jack Gayton, the divisional merchandise manager at the Vitamin Shop? Haven't checked that episode out yet? I'll make it easy for you by popping up the video for you right here. I'll also leave a link in this content's description. But I'm excited to share another jam session today that I think will surely be inspirational for anybody in the CPG industry. This episode, I talk with my good friend and co founder of FIt Butters, Ryan Bucki, aka the Fitness Informant, about some of his really creative business model strategies that sets his functional food brand apart from the competition. But before we get started, I wanted to quickly thank and give a shout out to the sponsor of this content, Ghost Lifestyle. As many of you know, I've been a huge supporter of this sports and active nutrition brand since it initially launched in 2016. Also, on my guest's ultra popular supplement industry media company, Fitness Informant, he and his community have named Ghost the prestigious winner of the Brand of the Year in 2020 and 2021. For those that might be wondering, my favorite Ghost products are the Sour Patch Kids Blue Raspberry Energy Drinks, the Chips Ahoy Whey Protein, and then the Bubblicious Legend Pre Workout. If you wanted to kind of grab your own, you could do that on ghostlifestyle.com or through fine retailers like GNC and the Vitamin Shop. But without further delay, here is my conversation with Ryan Bucki, aka the Fitness Informant, and the co-founder of the value-added nut butter brand FIt Butters. So, Ryan, appreciate the time, appreciate you jumping on board. I like we mentioned before, it's been a while since we've actually been on camera together.
Yeah,
Over a year at this point. I feel like we spent every week for like years, and then all of a sudden it was like cold
it
turkey.
was every week for years until I launched this company, and then it kind of like just like away because I was so
Yeah.
busy doing what I could to keep my head above water. So,
Yeah,
but then it's crazy because it's been 2 years already since I even launched the brand.
I
So I
know.
think it's been like we were talking probably a year and a half since you and I have been doing our consistent weekly podcast that we've done.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I mean, like, first off, I know I mentioned this when you sent me like that anniversary box, but like super proud of you for like obviously what you've built with Fit Butters. But I think even more than that, like the ability for you to balance everything, like being a father, being a husband, balancing not one but two businesses,
Right.
health, nutrition, all that kind of stuff, and then like just providing access, like basically 24/7, 365. I mean, like you're constantly always online, answering questions,
Yeah.
being available, or whatever. And it's like I don't know if people realize like how tough
It's
that is.
taxing. I mean, it's definitely taxing. I mean, it's not to say it's easy would be a lie because there are times where I want to just unplug and be away from my phone. But the problem is, as soon as I put my phone down and go sit on the couch to maybe engage in just some meaningless television, I get back up and I walk back to my phone. It's an addiction at this point because what if something happens with my business? What if somebody's delivery doesn't deliver and I need to fix it in the morning? So it's a blessing and a curse, and I need to find a better balance of it because I feel like I have this service to the people that I serve, whether it be
Yeah.
Fitness Informant or Fit Buyers, and I care about my customer base or my followers that much. I always feel connected. But having two daughters and a wife, it's like you got to find, and I'm working on this literally every single day. When do I put the phone down? When do I still try to give as much time as I can, but our daughters, I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, they grab towards the remote and things that look like cell phones because they see daddy on it all the time. And like that's something that I'm not like proud of, but I also understand like the grind, the hustle to grow the businesses to where they need to be so they're self-sustainable needs the time. So admittedly, it's exhausting, it's taxing. I love helping people. I love seeing my businesses grow, but I do need to find a better balance in terms of like when I put tech down and focus on the things that actually are important in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that resonates with me. It resonates with everybody. I mean, I've tried my hardest to like carve out at least a day where,
Mm,
like, if it's on Saturday or whatever, where I just try not to even look at it. And,
right.
and it's tough. It's like because I'm always thinking like, what if somebody needed me, or what's going on, or am I caught up on something, or whatever that is. And it's like it's a tough thing. Like you said, it's an addiction at this point, like
Yeah.
where it's just you're constantly on that thing. But we mentioned like you started Fit Butters 2 years ago, and I kind of want to like I was there at the beginning, so like I kind of know a little bit of like what was going on in your head, but obviously a lot of other people were not like at
Right.
that point. So I kind of want to get back to that point in 2020 and like get into your head a little bit and kind of talk through a little bit around like maybe like why the category of like, essentially like value added nut butters,
Right.
ultimately, like, did you go through any other like iterations or like businesses or like anything that went through your mind first that you like rejected? And then, also like the timing is kind of interesting thing to kind of
Yeah.
talk through. Like you could have picked probably better times to
Right.
launch a business, but you decided to kind of take the tougher road. So talk us through some of those things. I think it'd be interesting for people to kind of hear those.
For sure. So we started the brand back official launch was April of 2020. And no, there were no iterations prior to this. COVID hit in like January, February, became more of a thing that March, kind of when things started shutting down. And my primary business, Fitness Informant, is to provide value added content for partners within the dietary supplement space. So brands would pay me basically a monthly retainer to talk about product launches and formulations. Well, when you shut down the country, they're not launching new products and new formulations. So, I didn't have much value to add except for existing products that were out there in the market. But the consumers weren't going into a GNC or a vitamin shop to buy these products because they couldn't use them and then go to a gym. So it was very tough. And these brands were having, they're struggling cash flow wise. So they were calling me like, "Hey, Ryan, we can't pay you this month." So my mindset went to survival mode. How do I get additional revenue to make sure I can pay for this apartment that I'm in? And obviously, you and I have talked in the past. I have like a cash flow savings that we keep in case something like a plan B, right? But at the same time, you don't want to dip into that if you don't want to. So I said, okay, well, people can't work out and they can't, drink pre-workouts or whatever it might be. They can still eat and prepare healthy meals at home. So Danielle, my wife now, and I at the time started creating healthy how-to step-by-step process recipes in like 60 to 90 seconds. We just so happened on March 30th, 2020, to create our first sort of functional nut butter, which was vanilla coconut cashew almond. We used a protein from a brand that I worked with called Primeval Labs, and it was delicious. And I'm not the type of consumer that was going to purchase a $15 jar of nut butter, but she was. So she tried it and I tried it. And we had Hanks, we had Nuts and More, we had American Dream, we had all these other ones that these companies had sent me on Fitness Informant. And right away when I tried ours, I was like, this is a better mousetrap. Some might say like it tastes better. It's healthier fats. So I have a background at General Mills and Hormel and food marketing. I've always wanted to have a tangible product on the shelf, but I knew I didn't want to have a dietary supplement because if I came out with a dietary supplement line, I'm competing with the brands in which are paying me a fee to help add value to content. So the bell kind of the light kind of went off after that happened. We made that on March 30th, 2020. And that night I stayed up the entire night and I trademarked the name Fit Butters. Literally that night I went through a trademark process. My wife went to bed, woke up, had a nursing shift the next day. While she was at work, I started R&Ding other flavors. We kind of had the formula by luck. We literally Pinterest this recipe, Josh. I'm not kidding. Like we Pinterest the recipe. We did our own ratio of nuts. It was a cashew almond, and we decided to do the coconut oil thing. But we made 5 to 6 flavors, I think, that next week. So on March 30th, 2020, the idea was I had the thing trademarked. I had the website up. I designed all of our labels in Adobe Illustrator, which I had never used before. I taught myself Adobe Illustrator in like 12 hours, designed the labels, and we launched the website April 7th. So literally a week later, and we did our first production run on April 14th, 2020. So from the time I made our first nut butter ever to the time I drove 2 hours to a commercial kitchen to make over 100 jars of nut butter to ship out from pre-orders was 2 weeks during the middle of COVID, which is, I mean, saying it out loud sounds insane. And I'm sure hearing it probably sounds insane. And 2 years later, we are humming, growing. It's been a lot of fun, but it's been crazy.
Yeah, just that speed to market is insane,
Yeah.
and not even considering 2020, but just like at any time,
Right.
just the ability for you to come up with an idea and then turn that thing into a proof of concept
Yeah.
and then quickly realize, hey, we have something here. There is some product market fit,
Right.
and then kind of take it from there. You mentioned a little bit around like navigating the other business, Fitness Informant, and I think that you have something like kind of interesting there because you had to kind of walk the line. You had the ability to kind of leverage an audience already. Like,
Yeah.
not to say that like Fit Butters has, I guess, went above and beyond the Fitness Informant
Yeah.
audience, and it's a different kind of customer cohort, but you had at least eyeballs on you, you had influence, you had attention on you that you could kind of like snowball into that. But on the other side, you had kind of partners that you had to both be cautious of not competing against,
Hmm.
but also trying to figure out how do you leverage them as well because they're such a great resource.
Right.
And like talk through like how you decided to kind of go with that strategy because I think like the way you were able to kind of like creatively weave that is super unique because I think that most people would have tried to like stay far away from at least the vendor partner side because it could have got a little bit like weird.
Yeah. So obviously the category very mature. It's a declining category across. If you look at Mula, sorry, data and Nielsen data, Spain's data, whatever, it's declining like year over year. Nut butter category. We obviously are not declining. But we're also very new. So for me, it was like the partnering aspect was a point of differentiation for us that nobody else was doing this. So if you look at, say, Nuts and More, their whey protein isolate infused, they don't have to disclose who they work with because they source it directly from Glombia or Milk Specialties, someone like that, and they put it in there. And they don't flavor it. They just put like a whey protein and they'll add inclusions and they add some sweeteners. And they had the Shark Tank exposure, so they had their thing. So I knew I couldn't just do like another protein infused nut butter. I had something that was different that at least would catch the eye of our followers on Fitness Informant. And if it wasn't for Fitness Informant, FIt Butters would not be here today. It would not be successful because I leveraged that platform to get hundreds of pre-orders through customers. I also leveraged that platform to work within the brick and mortar retail network of sports nutrition to essentially launch the brand. Our first retail shop was a fitness shop in Rochester, Minnesota. I didn't get my first like FDM account until Hy-Vee, which was a full year later on. Vitamin Shop saw when we pitched to them, they saw like the buzz that we were making in the space, in the sports nutrition space with the collabs. But at the end of the day, like today's data shows us, and might be shocking to some people, 35% of our consumers will purchase the protein powders that we use in our nut butters after trying FIt Butters, but less than 3% of our consumers actually purchase our nut butters because of the protein powder that we use. So I never did it with the idea that they're going to help drive sales to FIt Butters. I knew in my head, just from a confidence thing, if anything, I'm going to help drive sales to them. And that's why it was a value back to the partners that I worked with on Fitness Informant. Because if I can't give you guys value in terms of content, maybe I can get people to buy your protein powders and become a lifetime customer of the brand if they like the FIt Butters and they try it and they buy the protein. Now they're buying the aminos. So I knew that for one, that we would provide value to them. That's not to say that they don't provide any value to us. They definitely, it's a point of differentiation for the brick and mortar retail network. I think they think it's unique. But I'll tell you, if I decided to drop the brand proteins tomorrow, none of our retailers would drop us. Vitamin Shop, Hy-Vee, Harmon's, Ones and Barley's would all still keep us because we're selling great. But I just knew it was a way to provide value. So if you look now on our jars, this one not we put QR codes actually on top too. So a customer can scan the QR code and buy that protein. So I tried everything I could to provide that value back to these brands that already had these pre-existing formulas of flavored proteins that would work well in our nut butters. So by leveraging the FI platform, I was able to explain that to NutriBios of the world, to the Pierce Labs of the world, and they thought it was a unique, cool idea. So we were able to work out a pricing structure that made sense for both. We provide value and marketing back to them. Plus, we got in front of a new consumer. So covering the space, like most dietary supplement, at least hardcore sports nutrition companies, have no idea how to speak to women. They have a hard time getting in front of the female buyer, which if you know anything about buying power, the females spend the most money. They control the wallet, the checkbook. So we're predominantly, it's 57% women, 43% men, which actually shocked me, that split. I thought it'd be 70-30, but we're able to get in front of, 50 to 57 to 60% women who these brands sometimes maybe can get in front of, like their sales are 90-10 maybe.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at their split. So it gave them also an opportunity to get in front of a new consumer that's not shopping their set. So I just thought all around, like, hey, it gives me a point of differentiation to talk about. No, we're not high protein. We never claimed to be. We didn't want to be, but we're being transparent. It then provides value to my brand. So it's kind of like, hey, win here for them, a win for retailers, because if retailers want something unique and different, and then once the customer actually tries the product and they get the flavoring and the texture, which I call the second moment of truth, then everything else doesn't matter anymore. It's if you win on flavor, you win the game.
Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of that information you put out there, because I think if I was a brand owner and you approached me the first day, I would probably, if I was bigger than you, I would be like, well, what are you trying to get out of me?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I
And you
think,
got that a lot, Josh.
and I think like now you have all of this supporting data to
Yep.
actually be able to stand on your own 2 feet and be like, hey, this is what I can offer to you if you want to
Right.
partner with us. It's not necessarily me trying to extract value, it's me trying to give you value.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that conversation has become a lot more easier now than it was at the beginning, because it's like, why would you go and kind of, I guess, complicate in a sense your supply chain,
Right.
to do all this stuff? I mean, and we've talked about these things off camera before, of the just like the trade-offs that happen with all these different things. And I think that the great thing I think that you've always had about these decisions is that you're like, which, I guess, swords that you want to die on and which ones
Mhm.
you're not willing to die on, like which ones you're willing to give up in the long run, or whatever. But I think having and actually understanding that's important, because some of these strategies, at least in the initial, like maybe might be counter to like profitability, or maybe, simplicity of your supply chain, or whatever those things are that are super important right now. But you kind of have a longer vision, I
Yeah.
think, on some of these areas.
Well, no doubt, right? I mean, obviously, if we go directly to say Purist or Muscle Sport or these brands, like you got to understand, okay, they're buying the protein from a contract manufacturer. So Formula Life is charging them an upcharge on margin. Formula Life is also getting charged an upcharge from Glomby or Milk Specialties. So there's an upcharge, and then I get it, for our cost. So it does cost me more, and it is a complexity, especially in a supply chain crisis where some brands are stopped making protein altogether, which I had with one of our SKUs. They stopped making the protein. Well, then that puts me in a place where I have to reformulate or cut that SKU. So those are complications that don't make my life easy. But obviously, as we started 2 years ago, it was something that I was willing to absorb and deal with because I wanted to keep that unique selling proposition that we had as a brand. Now, 2 years later, it doesn't matter as much. We're still doing that model because we have great partnerships. But I also understand, especially with the rising price of protein and the supply chain crisis that we're currently living in, it is becoming increasingly more and more difficult to do this. Not to mention, there are still some of those brands out there who, have come back to us and say, well, now we have national distribution in GNC. You probably should pay us a royalty fee and things of that nature. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, well, then we'll go somewhere else, right? Because I don't think they see it the way that I see it. I don't care if you have national distribution at GNC. The GNC buyer is not walking into a Harmon's in the middle of a nut butter set where it's next to Justin's and recognizing your brand. So you're not adding value to us. If anything, again, we're adding value back to you because this buyer who doesn't go to GNC, who has no idea you exist, are seeing your brand. And I recently had a conversation with our buyer at Hy-Vee about this whole, like, I mean, what do you think of the brand protein stuff? And he actually literally said to me, word for word, Josh, I kid you not, he goes, Ryan, I had no clue who any of these protein brands were until I met you. So like that right there says, okay, well, we're now introducing your brand in the 200 plus stores in the Midwest of a shopper who probably has no idea who they are either. And I'm happy that we're able to provide that exposure because that's the value add. Now, Fitness Informant and FIt Butters are completely separate entities today. They operate separately. So I don't necessarily have an obligation to provide that value back to these brands anymore, but I still do it because that's just who I am. And like it's a promise that we made to them. So, but yes, it complicates things. It increases cost of goods as everything else increases, plastics and cost of printing and cardboard and just everything. These are things that we have to constantly look at and reevaluate and say, okay. And we did this at General Mills. It was called HMM, Holistic Margin Management. Right? We look at say, whatever the customer doesn't care about, get rid of it. At the end of the day, if the customer does not care, why are we paying extra for it? So that now 2 years in, we're looking at things and saying, does the customer care about these things? Because if not, why are we paying extra for it? And by customer, it's the end consumer. It's the buyers that, like we're working with Wegmans now too. They don't care about certain things. So it's just those business decisions as you maturate and mature as a business, you have to go back and look at the middle of the P&L and figure out where you can shrink it to make sure that you can be a positive cash flow, reinvest back in the business and continue to grow.
Yeah, I think that's an overlooked area of innovation. Where I think a lot of people, when they think innovation, they think, is it maybe a line extension? Is it a new product launch? Is it a disruptive thing or whatever? But like the most, I guess, impactful one for a brand that's living, breathing, and doing well is like that restoration, kind of like, looking at it and saying like, how do we improve what we already have? How do we make those value propositions better? How do we make these products a little better? How do we make, our distribution strategy better? Like that is a form of innovation. It's just that most people don't look at it like that. They, they're focused on more, 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 not necessarily looking inwardly and saying like, how do I cut or add to things that I already have that are going to make them even more important?
Hmm. Yeah, and that's a great conversation that I had with my team too, because we had, some flavors that internally the team loved, but they just don't sell. So I said, team, like we got to cut 5 flavors, and they had a hard time comprehending why we would do that, because I can't put my resources in production on a full day shift creating this product that's just going to sit on the shelf when their time was better spent elsewhere. So like I can get more out of that workforce by building the more of a stock of say SKUs that are at Vitamin Shop and Hy-Vee. So even something like that, but yeah, you try to just eliminate the unnecessaries that you don't need, that nobody cares about. And I think that's a huge portion of innovation. So early on, I was with, I spoke with a lot of influential people that spent a lot of time at General Mills, and they said, Ryan, right now your primary goal is to grow the business and get as much shelf space as possible. It's not necessarily about margin. You can always go back after the fact and figure that out. But once you have shelf space and you have, positive consumer behavior and repurchases, regardless of what your margins are, they're a lifetime value they're a lifetime customer. Now you need to shrink the middle of the P&L without compromising the integrity of the product. Now you can fix all that. So in my head, I was always thinking like, okay, I'll overspend now, but when the time is right, we'll get a little bit more lean on certain things. And I've tried to be lean the entire time. I don't like overpaying for stuff. Nobody does. But sometimes you just have to bite the bullet to get things out the door quickly. And then, after the fact, you go back, you relook at it and say, okay, well, we don't need this, this, and this. Let's take that out and move forward. So, I mean, even like something like, we use branded inclusions like Oreo and M&Ms. I don't think we ever go away from that because I think an Oreo tastes better than a generic chocolate sandwich cookie myself. And I think if it's something that reiterates flavor, which is something that we're flavor first, I'm going to keep in. But if it's something that doesn't necessarily reiterate flavor or experience, then it's just something we don't necessarily need.
You talked about, deletion and kind of addition of flavors. And I think that leads into like another strategy that I think you've been able to leverage. And this is
Mhm.
around like the idea of like the drop culture. And I think it comes from like fashion or sneakers or whatever, where you, not necessarily CPG has used it all that much, but they are starting to now a lot more. But what was the decision around, doing some of those like limited edition or, those limited time offer type things? Was that something you always wanted to bring into it, or was it something at the beginning that you didn't know you're going to do, and then all of a sudden you started to add?
Yeah, always from the beginning. It was always going to be the strategy. Two things. One, living in Minneapolis, the brewery culture here is massive. And I've seen what they've done in terms of like, hey, this winter ale is coming out and people will be lined up down the block to get that. But you know what else they do, Josh? They'll buy that winter ale, but then they'll walk out with a growler of their favorite beer too.
Yeah.
So like at General Mills, what we saw on the massive cereal portfolio, right? If your favorite cereal is Cinnamon Toast Crunch and General Mills would launch an In and Out, whether it's like a churro or whatever,
Yeah.
customers are buying that churro version and they're still buying the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It's incremental sales. So your In and Outs not only create excitement in the category, bring customers to retailers, it also increases incremental sales, which is huge for everybody involved, myself, the retailer. So for instance, like when we drop a limited edition, and literally this year, every month for the rest of the year, we're either dropping a limited edition, an In and Out, a seasonal or brand new flavor. That customer is going to buy that limited flavor, and then the average cart number is like 3.6 units. So they're not just walking out with that one; they're walking out with that one plus two or three others.
Yeah.
Part of that is because they want free shipping, but it also gives them an opportunity to try their flavors. So from a cash flow perspective, it's a huge injection of cash flow back into the business after we do these limited editions. We get so much social media exposure and impressions, and we get new followers, and our ambassador team continues to grow. So as long as they're exciting flavors and interesting flavors, the sales will be there. Like we just launched Frosted Animal Cookie, which you got for our 2-year anniversary. We did 500 direct to consumer orders that week. 500.
Hmm.
We have never done that, not even close, ever, because people were so excited about it. We've done 500 a month, but in a week, absolutely unheard of. I mean, the day we dropped it, we did like 230 orders, and then you would think that would drop off substantially afterwards. Then we did
Yeah.
60, then 59, then 63, and it just didn't slow down, and it still hasn't slowed down. So what that did is it not only injected life into the brand and excitement, we have more people coming in that want to try it because they saw their friends posted about it on Instagram and social media. Now they want to try it. And now we've gained, I mean, the number of first time buyers that we had this last week is insane. And if, as long as we impress them with the flavoring, which we will, they won't go anywhere else.
Yeah, I find all of this like drop culture type stuff extremely intriguing because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, like all humans or whatever, we're like status seeking
Yeah.
creatures, and part of getting something that's limited, or you're having access to it and other people maybe don't,
Right.
you get to show that off, and then that ultimately just feeds like a flywheel for your brand,
Yeah.
because then the next time, because people weren't able to get that, then they're going to be waiting for that, and they're
Yeah.
waiting for you to do it again and do it again, and you need to do it the right way. There's definitely ways to kind of like dilute that strategy, and people have done it poorly, but if you do it correctly and you don't get like too high on that feeling, like, and kind of keep it restrictive, you can kind of feed into that for a long period of time. And it becomes like this exciting part of your brand that is different than, like you said, the daily driver side, where you're like, that's all efficiency. That's all creating like these flavors that people love, consistency, trying to cut out wherever. And then there's this other area where it's more about how do we create these unique special moments that can live for a little bit of time, that just
Mhm.
pulse up the brand over time.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I mean we get asked all the time, why don't you make this flavor a full-time flavor? Well, then it loses its specialness. It's not special anymore. Like red velvet's one of our most popular flavors. We had it over, Valentine's Day, and people are like, make that an everyday flavor. No, sorry, it's just too good to make. It's almost too good to be an everyday flavor, right? But so we do a good job of juggling things like, when we first launched, because of our efficiencies, we could only do like web only launches. Now we do, like, next month we have frosted sugar cookie coming out, which is completely different than frosted animal cookie. But this one we're doing is web only. So frosted animal cookie, our retailers can get. This time they can't, because a couple different things. Like, we want to keep a couple things special to just us. I think we reserve the right to be able to do that. We also give our retailers a lot of access to a lot of flavors, and they've been super supportive and great. But I'm also tossing around this idea, and maybe you and I need to talk about this at some point, is what if I launch an Amazon only flavor? Because I want to grow the Amazon business. And if I get people to buy on Amazon, obviously that's going to help with the algorithm. It's going to help get more reviews. It's going to help gravitate people to other SKUs within Amazon and grow that platform. Because Amazon, we look at Amazon as another retailer. It's a wholesale account for us.
Yeah.
If we can make, if I can make X amount of dollars per unit of what I'd make, say, be selling into UNFI, it is a win all day long. So how do I create uniqueness and specialty at Amazon? Well, I'm not going to do it with price. I have to charge a little bit higher on Amazon so I can support my brick and mortars. But what if I give Amazon an exclusive flavor that I don't even sell on my website? So, I'm looking at different things along that line too, the drop culture in different channels. And eventually we'll probably do like a brick and mortar only. I mean, we did like the Vitamin Shop had an exclusive on banana maple and it killed it. And we just got a peel from it this week. And it's still one of the number one ordered SKUs at Vitamin Shop because they had an exclusive for 6 months that their customer base just absolutely loves it.
Want to shift this a little bit. Being on the General Mills side and Hormel Foods and everything, like you knew what it took to launch new
Mhm.
SKUs and products or whatever, but it wasn't completely yours. Like, you didn't get
Right.
to make every single decision. There were other people that had to agree on certain things. Like, 2 years in, like, one, what has been your favorite thing or favorite things that you've found by building? And then secondly, like on the flip side, like, the biggest challenges that either you didn't know about or that you knew and you still like realized like this sucks.
Yeah. Well, I'm a marketing sales guy by trade. So I very much still enjoy the creative processes that go in. At General Mills, I was lead innovation on Cascadian Farm. So I create all the new products. What the frustrating point there is when I came up with an idea, it took 18 months for it to get in the market. What's cool here, we just R&D'd some new flavors last week. I mean, there'll be a market in a month if I want to. Like, we can go, go, go. I can create the campaign. This thing that you got was a lot of fun to do, the PR box. Like, it's just the ability to be creatively myself with nobody to answer to. Like, it's ultimately my decision to do what we want. Now, granted, I get opinions of others and
Yeah.
make sure people like it. But at the end of the day, it's my say. It's my final say. Nobody can tell me it. But and with that, it's, if we fail, it's on me. If we succeed, it's on me. The extreme ownership from Jocko, right? Like, I love that book. I think it's great. So that's been just really fun. Walking into a major grocery store and seeing my stuff on a shelf. Like, it's not easy to get into a grocery store. I hope people understand that. It is not easy, especially when you're just a small little cute brand in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're getting, we just had a review from Costco. Like, that's pretty cool to be like, hey, Costco's considering your stuff. Sam's Club is considering your stuff. So that type of stuff has been the ultimate, like, fun for me to even be under consideration, to have these conversations with these massive FDM and club store accounts. The hard part is just not knowing what I don't know. So like, for instance, like Costco, you have to design pallet configuration a certain way, right? Because they're not going to take something out of a box and stick it on a shelf. Like the box has to be cut off and they rip it open and just, but what I enjoy about the struggle, Josh, is the education piece to it. By not knowing what I don't know, I can learn about it and I can become more valuable as a human being, because there are so many things that I've learned on this business that I had no idea about at General Mills, because at Mills, my job was to look at Nielsen data, look at our merchandising, look at our promo calendar, and do demand planning and forecasting and create innovation. Okay. I wasn't creating the social media ad campaigns. I wasn't looking at PPC analytics. I wasn't creating the box designs and things of that nature. I do all of that now. And it's a lot of work, but it's just so cool to see the different facets of the business. And manufacturing was something too that was just, trying to on the fly learn about the FDA rules and regulations and making sure. So like when the auditor came in, you bet your ass I was sweating bullets, because I was like, I think we're doing everything to a T, and we never once got a written notice, nothing. Like everything was perfect, but like you just don't know, So any bad mark, that letter goes out to everybody, and it can ruin your reputation. So I would say now the struggle for us is just navigating the supply chain. I mean, there's a 17 to 20 week lead time on jars. I ordered heavy, which sucks because you drain cash flow for something you absolutely have no access to for 20 weeks. But it's, now the fun part is too, like just traveling. Once a month, we go and see retail accounts. So I get to see the world a little bit. I get to go out there, shake hands, thank people who've supported us since day one. And that also goes a long way, to walk into a retail store and they get to see the owner of the company come in and, thank them for the support. So it's one of those things that I always said, like, shit happens. You fail fast and you figure it out, because you don't have any time to sit there and sulk about it and be disappointed. Okay, it failed. What do we do now to make it better? And case in point, when we first started our first production date, April 14th, 2020, we had 10 Ninja blenders I bought from Costco, put around the room in this commercial kitchen. We blended up each one. There was 2 jars in each blender. So we're doing 20 jars at a time. The first day, 4 of the Ninja blenders out of 10 burnt out. So we're down to 6 for the second day. After the second day, 4 more burnt out. We were left with 2 Ninja blenders. And when we left that production, we were able to do enough to fulfill the pre-orders. And I just remember that drive home, I go, I'm not going to fail at this. I'm not going to go and buy 8 more Ninja blenders, because obviously that's not the solution. So what's the solution? Within that 6 days, we found a different solution, an immersion blender of all things, which still wasn't great, but it worked to get us by until we got into the GMP facility. But I could have easily been like, we're done. It was a hope. It was a dream. But we just figured it out. And, as a collective unit, we continue to do that. If we struggle and fail today, it's okay. You failed. Now just pivot and keep going.
You talked about like hopes and dreams. And I think like, I'm a big believer that I think like words have energy, and when you put them out there, they, one way or another, if it's manifestation or whatever it is, it comes back to you in one way or another. Whatever you think of mostly is what ends up happening. So I guess I'll end with the last question around like, think about maybe 5 years out.
Yeah.
Like what does FIt Butters look like? Like, what would you hope for out of the company?
For sure. I'm still at the head. I'm still running this. 5 years from now, I no longer want to be running Fitness Informant, if that's, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I love this. Like, I love what we're doing at FIt Butters. I still love what I do at Fitness Informant. Trust me, I do. It's just, I get more return on my investment for FIt Butters because there's a physical, tangible product out there, although I do love helping people live healthier lives. So 5 years, we have major distribution in a lot of big FDM accounts, including like HEBs and Publix of the world. We have a team of people who are managing some of these retail accounts, because, I'm still doing a lot. It's Danielle and me, my wife and I, and we have a CRM program, and her and I are daily managing these brick and mortar accounts. So, we'll have a bigger team of people. We're actually working with the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire in the fall and their digital marketing team. They're basically become our marketing agency for free as an internship program for them. So they're going to be working with me, and I get to kind of teach them some of the digital stuff. So being able to be that be the business that pays my bills and pays our lifestyle, will also be able to give back. Because one of the things that I've done pretty consistently since starting FIt Butters and Fitness Informant is financially, Josh, people like you and I are well off because we've worked hard and we've earned the things in our life, to the point where we have enough that we can actually give, right? So like the Ukraine crisis, we gave. The Barstool Fund, I thought was an amazing thing that that Barstool Sports said, we gave folds of honor, we gave. So I want to continue to give to meaningful causes because I don't need all of it, and we can reinvest a bunch in the business. But if we can help make an impact on people through giving, and I'm not the biggest religious dude in the world, but I do think one of the most powerful things somebody can do is to give.
Yeah.
So like I do want to, and thankfully I haven't been impacted by a lot of these things in my personal life, and I'm sure at some point I will. But I know there's a way we can utilize our platform for good and help people, provide a great product, and continue to grow. And at some point, there's probably an exit strategy. I don't know. We continually talk about it, like what's that number going to be. And in the beginning, it was exciting to hear like, well, what numbers that need. Now it's kind of annoying because I don't care what that number is. I
Yeah.
love what we're doing, and I'm sure there's a number out there. And talking to guys like Barry Turner, who you and I know very well. I mean, he said when he sold Lenny and Larry's is one of the biggest regrets of his life now because he didn't know what to do with his
Yeah.
time. He had a big checkbook, but he felt unfulfilled after that, and that scares the hell out of me. So if I have a purpose, and my purpose is this brand, 5 years, we are, we're still Vitamin Shop, maybe GNC, big FDM accounts, some international stuff. I mean, I look at what Nuts and More does. I think they're a $180 million company in terms of revenue, something along those lines. I don't know if we'll get to that point. It's big dreams and hopes, but just to be able to use this business to provide for my family, to give my girls a life that I didn't have, to help give back, I think would be amazing.
I think that sounds great. And I just want to thank you for the time and all the insights and value that you gave to my audience. I know they've obviously seen you before, but I wanted to give you the spotlight here to be able to talk about Fit Butters and kind of everything because I think it's a super interesting story, and I think a lot of people can gain a lot of value from the story. So I appreciate you giving me all the time and everything, and it was definitely enjoyable.
And I kept my shirt on the whole time, Josh. And that
Yeah.
is a win. That is a win. But thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting that like button to support me. Also, help me get to my short-term goal of 2,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that slightly more than 80% of you that are watching this YouTube video right now are not subscribed to my channel, and that makes me extremely sad. But I do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.